Part 8. Transformed into a comic book artist. Author, Miao by Sheng Wu. Chapter 72. What is female-oriented? In ACT terms, female-oriented refers to works that are consumed by the female group. I am afraid that when it comes to female-oriented books, most people will think of BL and Yuri, which is human nature. In the previous life, influenced by the island country ACT, female-oriented books were divided into girl-oriented, BL-oriented and Yuri-oriented. These are basically popular with women, but the female-oriented books that flashed in Susiener's mind were not any of these three categories. If you really want to clearly classify them, they should be in the girl category. It's not that she didn't consider drawing Yuri, but the people in front of her were fans of her water pen name, and the ACT circle in this world was very small. She didn't find a Yuri show or comics. She even checked Baidu and found only a few Yuri movies. Relatively speaking, there are quite a lot of gay movies. And this situation in the comics industry is obviously due to the style of painting, which made Yuri comics die without a burial place. Without the preaching of Yuri comics, will people in this world still like Yuri? Some girls like Yuri, that's for sure, but most don't. This circle is still too small. Thinking of this, Susiener typed and asked, "Do you like Yuri?" Yuri? Teacher, do you want to draw Yuri? To be honest, I don't like Yuri. Teacher, we still like BL, please draw BL. I don't hate it, but I don't like it either. In novels, I like to read Yuri stories. Listening to everyone's answers, Susiener thought to herself, as expected, boys are generally more excited than girls when talking about Yuri, because Yuri represents purity, and girls are soft, fragrant, and sweet in their fantasies, so most boys don't hate Yuri. But girls may be different, after all, men and women are different creatures, and they look at things differently. So, can I only draw that kind of female-oriented? In the previous life, there was also a kind of female-oriented in the AV world, the most famous of which was the Silk Labo series. I haven't checked Silk Labo's information carefully, so I'll leave it to the picky Ovo. Of course, she doesn't know if there are such books in the book world, because she hasn't looked for them specifically. After all, they are not her cup of tea, but she has been forced to popularize this kind of female-oriented book. This female-oriented book tends to be the ACT female-oriented girl-oriented book, which is mainly based on the female perspective. It is mostly one-on-one between men and women, and a few are reverse harems. Of course, there must be handsome men and beautiful women in the book. It pays more attention to a romantic atmosphere, sufficient foreplay, and more attention to emotional drama. It is not like the orthodox book that directly confronts right at the beginning, but with a storyline, it is closer to the process of real men and women fighting. If you really want to describe it in a concise way, it is Korean drama plus H or pure love plus H. Of course, there is definitely no life and death plot like Korean dramas. After all, it is a video for people to watch or vent, and the story rhythm still needs to be fast. And if you draw this kind of book, it should be able to satisfy the desires of these female fans, right? In that case, I won't draw lesbian stories. I've already thought of what to draw, but it may take a long time, so you guys should look forward to it. Susiener typed directly, I will definitely satisfy you. This kind of female-oriented story is born to serve girls, and it is simply popular among women of all ages. In fact, this is similar to the orthodox book. There are many ways to make readers want to fight in the book world. Battle uniforms, battle postures, battle environments, and words during battles are all key to raising readers' interest. And the female-oriented story that Susiener is going to draw also has various types of male protagonists. Domineering CEOs, gentle and warm men, sunny boys, and so on. These are the cool points of female readers, and of course handsomeness is the most basic. Of course, this kind of story is probably not liked by male readers. After all, This kind of book focuses on the plot, and the battle and the plot complement each other. However, this is also normal, after all, the audiences are different. What are you going to draw? Don't keep us in suspense. I'm so itchy, Mr. Shuabai is still teasing me. A group of girls couldn't help but urge Susienner to say what she said. Their impatient look was obviously no different from those who were begging for seeds on Taiba. I'm not going to tell you because I haven't thought about it yet. Just wait. I'll let you know when I'm done. Susienner smiled slyly. She didn't tell them because she wanted to tease them. She would tell them when she finished and uploaded it. Of course, there was another point, which was that she was very lazy. She didn't know when this would be finished, so she didn't want to make any promises. After that, Susienner stopped talking and let everyone tag her and chat privately without saying anything. In the end, everyone had no choice but to discuss in the group. Their curiosity was about to explode. Unfortunately, they could not come up with any results. They could only stare blankly. They even asked Lin Jingshu for help. Unfortunately, Lin Jingshu was obviously very shy about the matter of the notebook. If a large part of the people in this group were not her original fans, she would not have agreed to talk to Susienner about this matter. The helpless group owner, administrator, and group members could only wait. After closing the group named Girls Also Like to Read Notebooks, Susienner popped up in the group Long Live Miobi Teacher. Did you all do your homework honestly? At all staff. This group was created by Susienner when she taught MiHoYo and the artists of Bilibili in the afternoon. Its purpose is to teach everyone to draw, ahem, okay, actually it is to urge these artists to help her draw the draft. Teacher Miobi, don't worry. After watching your live broadcast, I am full of motivation. Yes, teacher, you are so cute. I will definitely work hard to complete your task. Teacher, I want to take a photo next time. How dare you talk to the teacher like this? You should call me Your Highness Princess from now on. Susienner was so angry that she typed, you are over 40 years old. Don't be cute. And don't call me Your Highness Princess. I am almost embarrassed. Teacher, this is not the name we gave you. Your fans seem to have formed a group of Miobi Princess Knights. However, this name seems to be undecided. They will change it when they know your real name. After Susienner yawned while singing and turned off the live broadcast in shame, the whole live broadcast room exploded. Everyone was like chicken blood, asking the super administrator to ask Susienner to at least come back and say goodbye and good night to them. Unfortunately, the super administrator could not contact Susienner at all. Suddenly, some people who claimed to be the Miobi Princess Knights appeared in the barrage, and they even said that they were forming a Princess Knights group now, and said that those who wanted to join the group should hurry up. In the live broadcast room that was almost breaking through 5 million, this call was responded to by almost everyone, and one by one, the Princess Knights group was gradually born. In less than half an hour, the number of people from 2,000 to 100. Of course, the Princess Knights are now facing a major test, that is, to get Susienner's recognition. After all, this is Susienner's fan group. If you can't get the other party's recognition, it will be meaningless. This is equivalent to the official and private servers. Toxic. When Susienner learned about this, a hashtag appeared on her forehead. Then she resisted the urge to complain and ignored the topic and said, hurry up and do your homework. I want to see the manuscript at 12 noon tomorrow. No problem, teacher, don't worry. I have been thinking about the style of Book of Life and Death for a long time. In addition, the three-dimensional image you gave us at noon is not a problem at all. Teacher, you should take a rest quickly. Don't be too tired. Your Highness, go to bed quickly. Don't yawn again during the next live broadcast. System prompt, Meow Bai's little pen holder was banned for 30 days by the group owner Meow Bai. Well done, teacher. Puff 233,333. Think about your mistakes facing the wall for 30 days, Susienner typed after being banned, and then closed the Q group. She looked at the time and it was already 9:30. She decided to play games before going to bed. Seeing that you have been thinking that Susienner is going to draw Yuri, I almost fulfilled your wish, but the Yuri book is not ready to appear yet. Calm down, calm down. If you don't know what Susienner is going to draw in this chapter, Beidou Silk Labo and you will understand. Then, it's a new week, please recommend. Finally, I just found out recently that Kidian actually has a book list system. If you think this book suits your taste, please add it to the book list, thank you. Transformed into a comic book artist. Author, Miao by Sheng Wu. Chapter 73. Susienner woke up at around 9 in the morning. She was not lazy today, maybe because she was too full and couldn't fall asleep. Lin Jingsha didn't come to call her either, mainly because it was still the National Day holiday, so it would be better for Susienner to rest more. After washing up, Susienner turned on the computer as soon as possible. Just now, when she was lying on the bed playing with her mobile phone, she saw that the artists had sent their homework to her QQ mailbox. After Susienner turned on the computer, she couldn't wait to download the drawings page by page to the computer. The first place in this rookie comic competition is related to a prize of 1 million. As for the second and third places, are they also called prizes? She felt very uncomfortable about owing money. Although it was owed by her and Amy Yip, they are now dependent on each other, so naturally they can't let the other party owe money. After downloading the drawings, Susienner browsed through them one by one. These drawings were not colored, and she did not need the artists to color them, otherwise it would take too much time. Besides, her comics were basically not colored, and everyone was getting used to it anyway. If she suddenly colored them now, her fans would be surprised. Browsing through the pages one by one, although there were no lines, Susienner was surprised. Although these drawings had some minor flaws, they were all above the standard and basically in line with her first page style. Of course, the dozens of artists each drew a page, and the reason why they could miraculously match her style was mainly because everyone started a live broadcast in the group and compared them one by one. They were all normal people and naturally not stupid. They knew what the reason was, that teacher Miyobi could only update one page, and now the other party came to them in a hurry. However, the artists were very grateful to Susienner, especially Yang Shen and Wang Su. As long as the painters who knew sketching and character sketching knew it, none of them would not be grateful. So they were willing to help Susienner, and they were even more grateful that the other party could teach them this painting technique. Otherwise, it would take too long to figure it out by themselves, and these drawings are proof of that. With their rich experience, they were able to imitate Susienner's style in just one night. Some people in particular even thought about becoming the comic assistant of teacher Miyobi. And Susienner only needed to slightly modify some minor flaws in the drawings and add some lines. In just over 2 hours, more than 40 pages of Book of Life and Death were completed. Susienner seemed to have discovered a new world, and her eyes were shining. In the future, I will ask those artists to help me draw comics. Of course, she will pay them wages. In this way, my life will be so beautiful in the future. I only need to draw the draft and pay the wages, and I can happily play games and be lazy and wait for them to finish their homework. I just need to make up for the flaws. Student Su, it's time to eat. I'm here, Susienner responded and checked the more than 40 pages again. Finding no loopholes, she uploaded it directly to Tencent Comics Network. Just when Susienner was dragged out by Lin Jingsha to eat, the Manga Home Forum was still discussing last night's live broadcast. I went to watch the live broadcast last night to learn secretly, but I found that I didn't learn anything after watching it. In the end, I was attracted by teacher Miyobi. The main reason is that teacher Miyobi has already drawn the line drawings. She only needs to finish the drafts during the live broadcast. There is nothing to learn. What's the point of learning? Just watch Miobi act cute. What's the point of drawing comics? I will rely on Miobi's live broadcast in the future. You are terminally ill. As the branch leader of the Knights, I sincerely invite you to join the Knights. Just swear allegiance to Her Royal Highness the Princess. Is this forum occupied by Miobi fans? Book of Life and Death has released a chapter. Reach star above? 1 chapter and 1 page, I understand. No, it's 1 chapter, more than 40 pages. When this word spread, most of the divers were shocked, and then they all clicked on the web page and entered Tencent Comics or Yu-Yokai to find that Book of Life and Death really updated a chapter. This time it is a real chapter, not a page. Teacher, teacher. The Book of Life and Death has been updated. At a manor outside the Magic City, Xiao Wang learned the news and quickly notified Lu Qingyun, who was having dinner. Has it been updated by 1 page? Seeing this, Lu Qingyun shook his head and laughed. After all, Susiener had a criminal record, but he didn't expect Miobi to be a girl. Thinking of this, he said lightly, wait until the Book of Life and Death is finished, and then notify me. No, it has been updated by 1 chapter, more than 40 pages, Xiao Wang explained quickly. Rumor has it that Miobi found a bunch of comic assistants and rushed it out overnight. Oh, Lu Qingyun put down his chopsticks and became interested. Have you read it? How do you feel? The first page of the Book of Life and Death seems to be an urban fairy tale comic, but Lu Qingyun doesn't think Susiener would be so ignorant, so this comic must be a suspense and mystery type, but he is very curious about how the plot will develop. Or, not only is he curious, but the reviewers who reviewed the suspense and mystery comics this time are very curious, and they are very much looking forward to Susiener's next plot. Unfortunately, Susiener's page update discouraged everyone, and their impression of her has been reduced a lot. Even Lu Qingyun is no exception. After all, no matter what the reason, this represents irresponsibility, but now Susiener has rushed out, which directly warms up his impression. I haven't read it yet. Xiao Wang touched his head and said sheepishly, and then Lu Qingyun and Xiao Wang came to the studio. In front of the computer, Xiao Wang took the mouse and followed Lu Qingyun's instructions to flip through the pages. Lu Qingyun read the 40 pages of the first episode for a long time, a full 10 minutes. The genius high school student got the Book of Life and Death from the King of Hell, discovered the function of the Book of Life and Death, and finally used the Book of Life and Death to punish rape and eliminate evil. He claimed to be righteous, and finally alerted the police. The mysterious man on the last page may be the protagonist's opponent, or one of the opponents, Lu Qingyun murmured. Then, according to the specifics of the suspense mystery manga, the protagonist is probably the murderer of the entire world. It is very interesting. It is stated that the protagonist is the murderer at the beginning, but this is a Book of Life and Death. The effect is obviously unexplainable, and the protagonist's identity has not been revealed at all, so how could he be caught? The Book of Life and Death has more than 40 pages, with no unnecessary plot. It uses the rapid passage of time to show the psychological changes of the protagonist Yagamayu. In just 1 sentence, the protagonist undergoes a transformation, and even shows that he wants to use the Book of Life and Death. Ideas that change the world. Lu Qingyun fell into deep thought as he spoke. After a while, he frowned slightly. I still can't figure out how to find out the protagonist. As he said that, Lu Qingyun looked at Xiao Wang next to him, and found that the other person actually started from the first place. I started turning the pages again. Seeing the other party's entranced look, and thinking about the situation I had just been thinking about, I couldn't help but be startled. The first episode can make people addicted to it. Lu Qingyun took a deep breath. The creativity and even the control of the story are terrible. Thanks to Knife Cut Orange for being the owner of this book. Spread the flowers. Then ask for recommendation votes. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Transformed into a comic book artist. Author, Miao by Sheng Wu. Chapter 74. The creativity of Miaobi is a bit outrageous. Is this what the Book of Life and Death actually does? The protagonist Yagamayu is so incomprehensible that it is impossible for the police to catch him. The plot at the beginning of Miaobi is too big. The protagonist is invincible. He doesn't even need to be at the scene to kill people. He is a new generation of King of Hell. How to draw this situation next? Tisk, I like Yagamayu's character. Some things in our society are too stupid. To protect each other, we need people like the protagonist to save her. When Susiener published the content of the first episode of Book of Life and Death, both cartoonists and readers came to watch it. As one of the masterpieces of the previous life, the opening rhythm of Little Book is very tight. If we refer to the online text, the first episode of Little Book, whether it is creativity, content, or the rhythm of writing, is extremely attractive. In one sentence, the first chapter has already entered the Gao dynasty. And she didn't modify any content at all. She just changed the names of places, people, and the god of death, turning it into the Book of Life and Death. Chiao Mo, who was at home at this time, carefully read the first episode of the Book of Life and Death with a gloomy expression on his face. He finally calmed down after thinking of something. Chiao Mo looked down on Miao Pen before, but this time the other party made him treat him differently, but he was only slightly surprised. Is the beginning of Book of Life and Death good? Well, great. It can be said that anyone who has watched the first episode will be attracted to it, but it also has a fatal flaw. Thinking of this shortcoming, Chiao Mo knew that the real enemy of this newcomer comic contest was still the duo of Lu Ping and Zhen Yi, not this so-called wonderful pen. Even if the opponent was a cute girl who was extremely popular in Tencent animation, but the review the newcomer comic competition is not for readers. Jingle bell bell. The phone rang, and when he saw it was Lin Swekin, Chiao Mo answered the phone. You can give up paying attention to Miaobi. By the way, you don't need to lead her anymore. Lin Swekin was a little ashamed at this time. He hated Miaobi half to death before, but yesterday it was revealed that the other party was a girl, which made his resentment dissipate. A lot. It's not that he has become a fan of Miaobi, but he feels that for a middle-aged man to compete with a young girl, he really loses his status and is a bit bullying. It seems that the teacher has also read the first chapter of Miaobi, Chiao Mo said with a smile after hearing this. Lin Swekin snorted coldly. I have to say that the first episode of Book of Life and Death changed my view of Miaobi a lot, but from the first episode it can also be seen that Miaobi cannot tell stories at all. Yes, Lin Swekin still thinks that Susiener can't tell stories. The stall for the first chapter is too big, the comic will collapse, and it won't be able to survive in the later stages. Lin Swekin said with a cold expression. The comics are actually similar to the novels. In the Book of Life and Death, the protagonist Yagamayu, the setting is that he is a genius high school student and the controller of the Book of Life and Death. This means that Yagamayu is invincible and will not be caught no matter how he kills, because he is not present at all. How to catch such a murderer? How are the people from the police station going to catch him? This is the difference between gods and humans, and Miaobi still draws it like this. Her beginning is really great, but it's a pity that Miaobi is just a 17-year-old girl. There is a sentence in the suspense mystery comic that is the author's representative work of IQ. The IQ of the characters, and the IQ of a 17-year-old girl can control the protagonist Yagamayu. If the protagonist's IQ settings are inconsistent, it means the comic collapses. Not only that, although Lin Swekin has never drawn suspense mystery comics, he has read many suspense mystery novels. He has never seen the protagonist or the murderer commit a crime with mythical means. So without a very reasonable plot, how could the police defeat this protagonist? Of course, if the mysterious man who appears on the last page is someone with the same means, then he can continue to draw, but this means that this comic has become mediocre. The struggle between man and God is more attractive, or is the struggle between God and God more attractive? There is no need to discuss this point, there is a conclusion. This is why Lynn Swecken is so determined. In some comic book author groups he has joined, many people are scratching their heads and cannot figure out how to find out the protagonist. You can kill people in the air, and you can also set the prisoner's death. This book of life and death is simply an artifact. Coupled with the protagonist's IQ, it is obviously invincible. If you put this in a novel, it would be a brainless and enjoyable article. But this is a suspense reasoning that requires logic and reasoning. Obviously, the first chapter of Book of Life and Death did not let him see these contents. Therefore, Book of Life and Death may be popular in other categories, but in suspense reasoning? Certain death. Not bad, Chiao Mo nodded in agreement. This is the fatal flaw of Book of Life and Death. It's fun at the beginning, but what happens next? This is a great test for a cartoonist, and he, who is very good at suspense reasoning, can't think of any way to find out the protagonist, let alone other people. While Lynn Swecken and Chiao Mo were talking on the phone, a pair was also discussing. This pair was Lu Ping and Zhen Yi. How about it? Can you think of some subsequent plot developments? Zhen Yi looked at Lu Ping expectantly, hoping to get a response from him. People in the comics industry didn't know that he and the other person were college classmates or roommates, and they had a deep relationship, so as soon as Zhen Yi invited him, Lu Ping came over to work as a story scripter for him. As the winner of last year's National Silver Award for Suspense and Mystery Novel, Zhen Yi has great confidence in Lu Ping. Today, Miyobi suddenly released the complete first chapter of the Book of Life and Death. The two of them read it 2 or 3 times. Zhen Yi and Chiao Mo and Lynn Swecken basically have the same idea. Lu Ping shook his head to signal the other party to be quiet. Then he watched it over and over again. As a senior author of suspense novels, Lu Ping knew that anything in a suspense mystery novel could be a clue, so the same could be said for comics. In other words, comics have pictures and are easier to discover. After a long time, Lu Ping frowned slightly and said, "If my guess is correct, the last mysterious person who appeared should be the protagonist's opponent. According to some rules of the Book of Life and Death that the protagonist obtained before, one of them indicates that if you don't know the appearance of the person being named, it won't work. Similarly, if you don't know the name and only know the appearance, it will be the same. In other words, if you want to confront the protagonist, then this person cannot show up and reveal his name." After a while, Zhen Yi couldn't help but said, "No more." "It's gone," Lu Ping said helplessly. "The information in the first chapter is too little to make it easy to reason, and this notebook is indeed invincible. If you look at it from the police perspective, you don't even know which country the protagonist is from. There are billions of people in the world. How do you catch the protagonist? It's like finding a needle in a haystack, it's difficult." Then this comic is bound to collapse. Hearing this, Zhen Yi breathed a sigh of relief. You must know that the pressure of Miyobi is very great. This style of painting can increase his points a lot. If the competition had not already started, he would definitely you have to imitate this style of painting. Don't be too happy too early. After all, we are not Miyobi. Maybe Miyobi has his own way. But when he said this, Zhen Yi was a little doubtful. Can he really follow this second chapter? When the first episode of the Book of Life and Death was released, many people were discussing the content of the first episode. As a result, they all discovered that the protagonist Yagamayu was simply cheating. As long as he didn't do anything, death is a completely invincible existence. And Zhao Jing even asked in the Tencent animation editor group, and the replies he got were all, "If you don't collapse, you will be a god." However, this made him smile bitterly. The logic of the first episode was too poor. Book of Life and Death as a suspense mystery comic, it seems difficult to not collapse now. While there was a heated discussion in the comics industry, at 8 p.m. on October 3, Susiener posted the second episode. Chapter 2 of Book of Life and Death, L. Gabrielle has been updated and the coffin is revealed. By the way, please vote for recommendation OVO. Thanks to Ling Xi and Lost Dream for being the helmsman of this book transformed into a comic book artist author, Miao by Sheng Wu. Chapter 75. On October 3, at 8:30 p.m., Chiao Mo was having dinner with friends outside. Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. Old Chiao, you should be able to win the rookie comics competition this year. Old Chiao's book Criminal Investigation is very rigorous in reasoning, and the logic is very clear, and it also buries many small pits. If he hadn't said it, I really wouldn't know. If nothing unexpected happens, it should be able to get a good score, but Zhenyi's book 6 Doors is not bad, so you still have to be careful. Most of the people present were Chiao Mo's best friends, so there was no politeness when talking. What Lao Xiao said is right. As a martial arts mystery, 6 Doors is considered mainstream, while I go for the urban genre, so it's hard to say. I've also watched 6 Doors, which should not be underestimated. But let's not talk about these things at the party today, let's eat. Just as Chiao Mo finished speaking, his cell phone rang. Seeing this, he apologized and smiled. Then he saw that the caller was Lin Swecken, and he answered directly, "Teacher, what's the matter? Where are you now?" "I'm having a party with friends." "What time is it? You're still having a party?" Immediately log on to Tencent Comics and watch Miobi's Book of Life and Death." Lin Swecken's voice on the phone was anxious and anxious. "If you can't deal with it this time, then you can only hope that Miobi will make a mistake, otherwise you will definitely miss the championship this time." Chiao Mo's smile froze. He knew his teacher Lin Swecken, who was a relatively conceited guy, but he was very good to him. He was his mentor, so he respected him very much. But now his conceited teacher actually said such words, and the other party didn't have much good feelings for Miobi. "Teacher, what happened?" Chiao Mo took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. In just one day, could something happen that he didn't understand? Miao Bai has released the second episode of Book of Life and Death. Lin Swecken frowned and looked worried. "I can't explain too much to you now. You can understand it by yourself." The second episode was released. Chiao Mo was shocked. The first episode was just released at noon yesterday. It's been more than a day, and the second episode is out? Is Miao Bai a tentacle monster? The news has been confirmed. Miao Bai seems to have taken classes with MiHoYo and the artists of Bilibili, and then asked these artists to help her complete the Book of Life and Death. Lin Swecken rubbed his eyebrows and sighed. That is to say, the update of this Book of Life and Death will be very fast. Okay, let's talk about these things later. You should go and see her second episode. With that, he hung up the phone without waiting for Chiao Mo to speak. Chiao Mo was confused, and then he picked up his phone and logged into the Tencent Comics app and found the second episode of Book of Life and Death. He read the nearly 30 pages of content very quickly. In other words, the more you read, the more frightened you are, and the more you read, the more you feel desperate. Yesterday, except for the readers and fans of Miobi, almost all cartoonists were not optimistic about Book of Life and Death. The reason is very simple. This comic is not easy to draw, and almost no one can control it, because the protagonist is invincible in their eyes. However, when he saw the new character L, using the death row prisoners live broadcast to test Light Yagami's killing method, he was completely stunned. That's not all. It turns out that this so-called global live broadcast is only broadcast in the Magic City. The reason is that the first person killed by the protagonist in the experiment is in the Magic City. Moreover, each area is broadcast with a time difference. As a result, when the live broadcast happened to be in the Jing'an district of the Magic City, it was seen by the protagonist and reacted, which immediately exposed the protagonist's location. Magic City, Jing'an district. In an instant, it shrank from the world to the Magic City, and then from the Magic City to the Jing'an district. After reading it, Xiao Mo felt cold all over, and he didn't find any loopholes at all. The whole plot is reasonable and the logic is very clear. At this time, Xiao Mo knew that the Book of Life and Death had only 2 chapters, and it was already better than the comics he, Zhen Yi, and Lu Ping had created. Yes, with only these 2 chapters, the Book of Life and Death had beaten all the beginnings of suspense and mystery comics, and even most of the classic mystery novels were not as good as them. Because at this time, he was actually impatient, and he couldn't wait to see what was going to happen next, which made him desperate. With trembling hands, he flipped through the book review section of the Book of Life and Death and found that it was indeed full of good reviews. "I'm a fan of L's line, come on, come and kill me, damn it. Teacher Miyobi, please update quickly." Yesterday, most cartoonists were not optimistic about Miyobi, and today he got a slap in the face. In the blink of an eye, the protagonist is in danger in the 2nd chapter. I'm so dumbfounded. Isn't L's IQ too high? Is the protagonist going to die? A big reversal. But this can't be blamed on Light Yagami himself. After all, he must experiment with this Book of Life and Death. I didn't expect that this point was caught. The Jing'an district of Magic City was directly circled to mourn for Light Yagami. It feels like it's over. The protagonist should run quickly, go to other cities. Don't show your IQ upstairs. Let's not talk about the protagonist being a high school student. Even if he is an adult, where can he run? Although the protagonist kills people who deserve to die, it is murder after all. The police have already targeted him. Do you think they won't conduct a secret blockade? As long as the Book of Life and Death is checked, he will be dead directly. I can't adapt to the local climate, so I will adapt to Miyobi. When the review section of a comic or book is full of people urging updates or discussing the plot, it means that the comic has become popular. And Xiao Mo also specially logged into Manga Home to take a look, and found that Book of Life and Death had been directly slaughtered, and there was no trace of other suspense comics at all. Yesterday, some people were discussing his comics, but today they can't even get excited. "Old Xiao, are you okay?" the friend next to him asked with concern when he saw Xiao Mo's ugly face. "It's okay, let's eat." Xiao Mo forced a smile, but looking at the sumptuous dishes on the dinner table, he had no appetite at all. Magic City, Garden Community. "Lao Ye, have a drink with me tonight." As the editor-in-chief of Tencent Animation, Lin Weiguo felt a little worried at this time. "It seems that something happened to you." Ye Wei smiled. "He came here today, it was just a small gathering between the 2 of them. After all, it was the National Day holiday, so it was time to relax. You yourself have something to do." Lin Weiguo is the editor-in-chief Lin, who was not optimistic about Susiener at the beginning. He seemed to have no dealings with Luoyang in the company, but in fact it was just his personality and he was quite upright, so apart from official business, he had a personal relationship with Luoyang still very good. When Ye Wei heard this, he smiled bitterly and shook his head, sighing, "There is indeed something wrong. School violence incidents have been frequent recently, and videos have been released in various places. And I am the editor-in-chief of the youth newspaper, so the editor-in-chief asked me to open a column and talk about it. Regarding the school violence incident, it was said that the higher UPS might want to amend the unformed law. But although I paid attention to this issue before, I was not prepared at all. As a result, it will happen in the next few days." Sigh. When Lin Weiguo heard this, he laughed dumbly and said, It seems that my job is much easier than yours. We at Tencent Animation have an outstanding cartoonist. The editorial department is very much looking forward to this newcomer. As a result, the content of the first episode yesterday it's a little bit shaky. I feel like the other party won't be able to control it, and this newcomer comic competition may be in doubt. As old friends for 10 years, the two are used to confiding some troubles to each other. While the two were chatting, Lin Weiguo's cell phone rang. After answering it, he looked surprised. Really? Okay, I'll go take a look. What's wrong? Yawiki asked. Happy event. Lin Weiguo couldn't contain his thoughts at all. He ran directly to the study and opened the second chapter of the Book of Life and Death on the computer. Yawei followed curiously. His old friend was like an old child sometimes. He was naturally surprised that he was so happy now. Okay. A few minutes later, Lin Weiguo finished reading the second chapter and couldn't help laughing. Yesterday, our editorial department discussed in the group, and we all thought that this comic must be a good one if it doesn't collapse. It seems that the little guy with a wonderful pen it didn't disappoint us. I hope the other party can maintain its level and not fall apart halfway. Yawei had been standing behind Lin Weiguo when he started watching the second episode of Book of Life and Death, and when he saw page 28, L and Yeshinayu both claimed to be righteous. When, his eyes lit up and he murmured, "Justice." Old Lin, get up, let me take a look. Yawei rudely pulled Lin Weiguo up, then sat down and started watching from the first episode. He didn't read very fast. After all, he didn't read comics before. The slow viewing speed allowed him to see very carefully. When Yawei finished reading the 2 chapters, he breathed a sigh of relief and said with surprise in his eyes, "Wonderful." After saying that, he stood up and said, "I'm going back first, I have something important to do." "Oh, why are we going back?" Lin Weiguo just wanted to share the joy with his old friend and listen to the other person's views on the comic, but he didn't expect that the other person was about to leave. You comics editors saw a wonderful showdown of IQs in the Book of Life and Death. And I saw humanity. After saying something that Lin Weiguo was a little confused about, Yawei said goodbye to him and hurried home. Tonight was destined to be a sleepless night for him. If my recommendation vote has been eaten by you, spit it out quickly. Thanks to Ling Xi and Lost Dream for becoming the leader of this book, and thanks to Gdern for becoming the leader of this book, transformed into a comic book artist author, Miao by Sheng Wu. Chapter 76. So boring. Susienner was lying lazily on the table. Today was October 4th, and the senior high school holiday was over. She was woken up by Lin Jingshu early in the morning and was pulled to class. She spent 2 whole classes in a daze, playing with her phone and sleeping. Although campus life was good, the atmosphere of senior high school was really boring. "Student Su, this is your mock test paper." After Lin Jingshu handed out a stack of test papers, she finally handed Susienner's test paper over, and her little face looked strange. Surprised, unbelievable. Susienner took it and looked at it. It was a math mock test paper, 150 points, full marks. Then Lin Jingshu saw Susienner stuff the test paper into the table and continued to lie lazily. "Aren't you surprised?" Lin Jingshu couldn't help asking. "Full marks. Full marks. Isn't full marks normal? Only paramecium can't get full marks." Susienner was basking in the sun, and her whole body softened, extremely comfortable. She didn't like the sun at home, but the happiest thing at school was to bask in the sun and then sleep comfortably on the table. You scolded 99% of the human race with this sentence, including me. And how can this be normal? This is a question that the teacher selected from the previous college entrance examination questions and then modified it with his own experience. It's so difficult, but you got full marks. Lin Jingshu looked incredible. Since she met Susienner, she had never seen her study. If she didn't urge her every day, She probably wouldn't bother to write homework, and even if she did it, she would rack her brains to find a way to copy her. Every time she took a mock exam, she would come over to copy. This made her think from the bottom of her heart that Susianer was a poor student, which was also something she was worried about. That is, the college entrance examination will be in half a year. If the two of them are admitted to different universities, then they will never see each other again, right? So every time she thought of this, she was anxious, but Susianer had never worked hard, was lazy at home, and didn't study at school, which made her desperate. As a result, when the math teacher handed down the last test paper before the holiday today, she was stunned. The test paper was very difficult, and she, who had always worked hard, was very troubled. She only scored 130, but Susianer actually scored full marks. My God. By the way, since you scored full marks, you have to help me with homework in the future. Susianer thought of something, continued to stick to the desk, squinting her eyes lazily, looking at Lin Jingshu. You can't regret it. In her previous life, she was a Peking University student. As soon as she entered university, she became lazy. As a result, she was unemployed as soon as she graduated from university. As a lazy student of Peking University, although she was lazy during school, her grades were still good. As a result, she was unemployed after graduation. Of course, it was not that she couldn't find a job, but that she couldn't find the job she expected. Then she realized that hard work was useless. In just half a year, she became like this. She stayed at home all day and only studied things that interested her. When she had no money, she would take some orders on the internet. Her life was more comfortable than the job she had hoped for before graduation. This made her a complete hedonist and even more lazy, and it became even worse after she moved into the house. Ah! Lin Jingshu blinked and suddenly remembered that before the holiday, she did say that as long as Susianer could get full marks in one subject, she would take care of the homework in the future. Thinking of this, her face was strange. You are not doing this for this, right? Of course Susianer was bathing in the sun, so comfortable that she didn't want to open her eyes, so she simply closed them and enjoyed it. If it weren't for this, do you think I would use my brain to do this test paper? Lin Jingshu was speechless, but she was happy in her heart. It turned out that Susianer didn't know how to do it, but was too lazy to do it. Then they could go to college together in the future. As for homework, since Susianer's grades were so good, it was obviously okay not to do homework. Ding ling 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 ling. When the bell rang, Lin Jingshu hurriedly said, "Then I will take care of your homework in the future, but you have to let me see how many points you get in other subjects, otherwise I will regret it." Susianer looked at Lin Jingshu speechlessly. "You have learned bad things. You were not like this before. Do you know how cute, kind, and gentle you were before?" "That's because I was influenced by you," Lin Jingshu said unhappily, and then returned to her seat. "This is Chinese class, Zhou Qinji's special class." When she came in, she saw Susianer wearing a pink and white sportswear, lying limply on the table, and the books on the table covered her little face. Seeing this, Zhou Qinji thought of Susianer's drawing book, and she was furious. "Susianer, come here, hand out the test papers, this class is a mock exam. This is how senior year is. 90% of the whole day's classes are mock exams. Teacher, I am no longer a study committee member. You should respect classmate Lin." Susianer raised her face, full of innocence. During the time she asked for leave, Lin Jingshu became the new study committee member. As for why Zhou Qinji didn't pass the test papers from the front to the back, it was because the content of each test paper was different. Zhou Qinji would classify the difficulty according to each student's academic performance, so it was necessary to distribute the test papers. Upon hearing this, Zhou Qinji snorted coldly. "Student Lin is only the acting study committee member. When you come back, you are still the study committee member, and you are also the Chinese class representative. Come and distribute the test papers. Susiana raised the white flag in surrender. After slowly handing out the test papers to the students, she found Zhou Qinjie sitting next to her. Susiana instantly had a bitter face. She knew that she had to do this test paper. By the way, everyone must be careful about this composition. Zhou Qinjie thought of something and stood up and said, "The composition is about school violence. Although our school is a key middle school and there is no such phenomenon, you as students should resist this behavior, so you must write this composition seriously." After saying that, Zhou Qinjie saw that everyone had started writing, so she sat down with satisfaction. Then she looked at the corner of the test paper exposed in Susiana's desk, took it out and saw that it was a math simulation test paper. She was stunned when she saw the full score of 150, and then her face eased a lot. Even if you have good grades, you can't be distracted from your work and draw in a notebook, Zhou Qinjie said angrily, and it was obvious that she was still upset about this matter. "Teacher, I'm doing the test paper, you can't disturb me," Susiana said seriously. Zhou Qinjie rolled her eyes at the other party, but didn't say anything. Susiana finished very quickly because the questions were not difficult for her. In addition, the real Susiana's mind was full of learning materials. With inherited memories and a self-proclaimed top student from Peking University, these questions were too easy for her. In just 20 minutes, Susiana finished, and the last part was the composition. When she turned to the composition, Susiana took a look and suddenly a strange look appeared on her pretty face. Questioning the recent school violence incidents with the justice in the comic book Book of Life and Death. Recently, a large number of school violence videos have been exposed online. The words and deeds of some male and female students in the videos are outrageous. It is really hard to imagine that these people are some 15 or 16-year-old children. The ancient saying is that young people are the foundation of a strong country, but when these shocking videos are exposed, the future of our great China is worrying. But from a rational point of view, these violent people may be due to family reasons, psychological reasons, or even environmental reasons. Before, I could only watch the video in anger and powerlessness, but I didn't know how to inspire people with my pen. Yesterday, by coincidence, I read the comic book Book of Life and Death and found that its protagonist was originally a high school student. After getting the Book of Life and Death, he felt a heavy responsibility and was determined to cleanse the world's evils to realize the justice in his heart. I was quite touched, so I wrote this article. Now I am here to ask, then those who filmed the video, those who watched the show, those hypocritical teachers, where is your motivation? Where is the justice in your heart? When your classmates were bullied, you didn't stop them, but watched and laughed, and filmed the video. As a teacher, can't you see the students' movements from your usual behavior? As long as you are careful, you can find it. But because of your fear of trouble, you may destroy a pillar of the country. What is the difference between the badness of your actions and the violence of the people? As long as someone speaks out to stop it, not afraid of retaliation, and twists together, school violence will be eliminated sooner or later. It only takes a little help from everyone to achieve it, without any effort. Why doesn't anyone do it? Is there no justice in the world? Maybe this world needs a night god like Yewei, the editor-in-chief of the youth newspaper. With the title of Justice, outline the justice in your heart and write an essay of no less than 800 words. After Susiana finished reading, she felt strange. Then she nodded at Zhou Qinjie and asked, "Teacher, when did this happen?" Zhou Qinjie took a look and whispered, "This is a column in the morning youth newspaper, which is specifically about school violence. This article was written by the editor-in-chief Yewei. Yewei is famous for his sharp pen and often comments on some social phenomena. I admire him very much, because there are some things that others dare not say, but he dares to say. This article about justice is quite meaningful, so today I will let you talk about the justice in your heart." In Zhou Qinjie's view, this is a kind of positive energy. She naturally wants to spread it after seeing it. Of course, she has not read the Book of Life and Death, otherwise she would know that the author of the Book of Life and Death is Susiener. Meow meow meow. After listening to it, Susiener was confused. A new day, please recommend OVO. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Transformed into a comic book artist. Author, Miao by Sheng Wu. Chapter 77. Is the youth newspaper influential? Big. It is a sub-publication of China Youth Daily. Although it is not actually the mouthpiece of the government, it still has influence across the country. Not to mention the recent frequent incidents of school violence. After Youth Daily reported the matter frequently, internet people paid even more attention to Youth Daily. Coupled with the video exposure on social platforms such as Weibo, Taiba, and even QQ, the response to this incident was extremely enthusiastic. After several days of fermentation, Weibo's hot searches have long been dominated. But when Ye Wei, the editor-in-chief of Youth Daily, expressed his views on this incident this morning, the internet was instantly shocked. In addition to the actual publication of Youth Daily, it also has an official Weibo account. The official intercepted what Ye Wei said and published it directly on Weibo. This allowed many people who follow Youth Daily to see it in an instant. This statement. Although it was early in the morning, and during the National Day holiday, many people had not yet gotten up, but the discussion on Weibo completely erupted with Ye Wei's remarks, and everyone expressed their own opinions. Editor Ye is right. In fact, in my opinion, those children who commit violence are hateful, but this is a matter of perspective, but those who shot the video are even more hateful than these naughty children. This is no longer a matter of three views. It's not normal, it's a moral issue. The onlookers are also despicable. They don't want to help. Some of them are still laughing and watching the fun. Are they still human? I still support using violence to fight violence. These naughty children will not know their faults unless they are beaten and maimed. You can beat me to death. When I saw those videos yesterday, my whole body exploded. I have seen many people say that when these naughty children mature, they will feel guilty. This is simply ridiculous. What is the use at that time? How much psychological shadow did those bullied children suffer at that time? Not to mention some people even commit suicide, and in severe cases, their whole lives are ruined. This is even more hateful than killing someone. Ye Wei's remarks were recognized by a large number of netizens, and among this group of people, there are many people who are curious about what kind of comic book of Life and Death is. Even those angry people liked and forwarded their comments. I can't help but be curious. After all, Ye Wei said that he had read the Book of Life and Death before making this comment. Many people went to Baidu because if they want to have a deeper understanding of what Ye Wei said about justice, they must read the so-called What Kind of Character is Yagamayu. This time, the incident has received great attention across the country. Unlike Susiener Sakura wants to see you last time, which was only a matter in the music circle, this time it is a social incident. When countless people forwarded the comments of Ye Wei, the editor-in-chief of Youth Daily's official Weibo, to various social platforms, this incident completely exploded like a powder keg. Almost everyone across the country is discussing this matter, because it concerns almost everyone. The reproduction of offspring is an eternal topic for mankind. And if their children are treated unfairly or violently at school, but the children don't tell them, by the time the parents find out, it's already too late. Therefore, anyone who is a parent or even a student at school is extremely concerned about this matter. In just 1 hour, the words of Ye Wei, the editor-in-chief of Youth Daily, were trending, reaching the top of the trending list. Under the official blog of Youth Daily, most people agreed with what Ye Wei said. But not long after, Li Yuran, the editor-in-chief of Yangcheng Evening News, replied to Yewei's comment. I just woke up this morning and read what editor Ye said, and I strongly agree with it. But I don't agree with the justice in editor Ye's words. 10 minutes ago, I specifically searched the Book of Life and Death. Although this comic is a suspense mystery, but it is not easy to be able to see human nature in just 2 words. But the justice of the protagonist Yashinayu, whom editor-in-chief Ye agrees with, I cannot accept or accept. After he gets the Book of Life and Death, he regards the law as his own. Nothing. From a perceptual point of view, what Yashinayu did may be correct, but from a rational point of view, Yashinayu itself is violating the law. How can a person who regards the law as nothing be called justice? The 3 views are too crooked. If a Yashinayu really appears in society, it will be the misfortune of the world. In Li Yuran's view, although Yewei's words were a bit extreme, his starting point was good, and the other party was standing on the right side, so there was no problem. So he was interested in the Book of Life and Death mentioned by Yewei. When he saw it, he frowned and couldn't help but post this on Weibo. In his opinion, this trend cannot last long. Is Yagamayu just? As a person with independent thoughts, he agreed with Yewei's words, but he would never allow the other party to distort everyone's views. As the #1 hot search topic that has attracted much attention at this time, everyone is browsing some forwarded comments almost all the time. As an editor-in-chief of the Yangcheng Evening News, Li Yuran is also very well known in the industry and is famous for his rigorous speech. Some Chinese the young people like each other very much. As soon as Li Yuran posted on Weibo, everyone agreed. Many people said that they had just finished watching the Book of Life and Death and found that Yashinayu's 3 views did have some problems, but now that Yewei was the general trend, they did not dare to say anything. After all, the other party's other words were agreeable, but there was no thinking of Li Yuran, he was the first to jump out and question. This made some people with similar ideas come over to like it one after another. As a result, this statement ignited the topic. Whether it was to attract attention, gain attention, or express indignation at the school violence, critics, experts and professors, and even editors-in-chief or chief editors of major newspapers could not help but come out to join in. Excuse me, I cannot agree with what Chief Editor Li said. In my opinion, everyone has his own 3 views, and the formation of the 3 views is influenced by the family environment, living environment, education, and even life experience. So none of us has any right to comment on other people's 3 views, because everyone's 3 views are different. In the Book of Life and Death, Light Yagamai's character is naturally formed by his own reasons. His hatred of evil represents his hope that this filthy world will be purified. It's just that the means are a little extreme, but in my opinion, he is not wrong. Not to mention the comics, don't we have so many injustices in reality? Ridiculous. Professor Hao, your remarks are simply subverting this society. According to what you said, these children who committed school violence also have their own 3 views. If their 3 views have been distorted like this, it is wrong for us to accuse them here? Is that so? This is simply ridiculous. The law is the ultimate weapon of the people. Light Yagamai just got the Book of Life and Death, and then he presumptuously called himself a god and ignored the law. In the second episode, when in the video, the police were right. The death row prisoner was about to be executed, but Light Yagamai killed him first. So where is the credibility of the police? In the long run, who will trust the government? This will cause social unrest. In my opinion, Light Yagamai's thoughts are evil, and he is the biggest terrorist. Editor-in-Chief Chen, are you confusing people? The 3 views I mentioned refer to normal people, not those violent teenagers. Please think about my words before you speak. Also, I still say that I don't comment on Light Yagamai's actions, but I agree with the justice in his heart. Justice, what is justice? Everyone has a different sense of justice, but I know that justice is justice, it is a positive energy. After reading the Book of Life and Death, I think what L said is right. Light Yagami himself is committing a crime. When time passed, most people woke up, but found that the entire network had changed in just one night. Weibo, Taiba, and even forums were full of comments from critics, sociologists and even editors-in-chief of major newspapers. And the center of these comments was actually discussing a comic. After finding the source, everyone couldn't help but search for Book of Life and Death on Baidu out of curiosity. They really wanted to see why the discussion about school violence turned into a discussion of justice in Book of Life and Death by the whole society. What magic does Book of Life and Death have? Thanks to the book friend Li Dongyu for popularizing Peking University's top students. The top student Susianer in the previous article has been changed to the lazy student Susianer. Then, the sentence justice may be late, but it will never be absent said by editor-in-chief Yewei was also deleted. After thinking about it, I still think that the little fairy should be the one to show off. If you want to read it, you can refresh it. If you don't read it, it will not affect the reading of the following text. Finally, please recommend it. Thanks to Ling Xi and Shi Mang for becoming the guardian, and thanks to Rong Aruo and Dao Tang for becoming the helmsman of this book. Transformed into a comic book artist. Author, Miao by Shen Wu. Chapter 78. As the Weibo incident fermented, more and more people paid attention to it, and more people knew about it. Zhao Jing also received the news of such a big thing early, and logged on to Weibo with nervousness in his heart. He read it very carefully, starting from the source of what Yewei, the editor-in-chief of the Youth Daily, said. Until now, almost all the experts and professors who paid attention to the school violence incident and even the comments of the editors-in-chief. Taking a deep breath, Zhao Jing put down the mouse, picked up the phone and called Luoyang. I'm still sleeping. Luoyang answered the call, obviously a little speechless. It's still the National Day holiday, you won't let me go back to work overtime. Although he is almost in his early 40s, Luoyang will still chase TV series from time to time during holidays. Last night, he reviewed the Ming Dynasty 1566, but he watched too much and went to bed at 3 or 4 in the middle of the night. My dream is coming true. Zhao Jing, who has always been calm and steady, trembled a little when he said this. Huh? Luoyang was shocked and had not yet reacted. What? Dream? As Zhao Jing's old classmate and his subordinate in the company, Luoyang hasn't heard these two words from Zhao Jing for a long time. Dream. I still remember that he talked about it in college. I like to read comics. I will draw comics myself in the future to let more and more people know about comics. If I have a dream, it is to make people all over China and even the world like comics. Luoyang vaguely remembers that 20 years ago, Zhao Jing's young and vigorous face said the sentence with high spirits, and the love revealed in his eyes was extremely hot. In the past 20 years, Zhao Jing started as a cartoonist. However, after drawing for 3 or 4 years, he despairedly found that the style of the comic circle could not get out of the circle at all. If you want to make comics go nationwide, you must change your style. But Zhao Jing's thinking at that time had been imprisoned, and he couldn't get out of the muscle style, so he made up his mind to give up writing and apply for an editor. Every newcomer in every industry has his own active thinking. Zhao Jing wants to train newcomers, and he has been doing this for nearly 20 years, but when he became the editor-in-chief, he was really desperate. The more you understand this circle, the more you know the fatal flaws of the comics industry. Until Susianer's appearance, the different painting style made Zhao Jing's long-deposited dream surface again. This is also the reason why he is so accommodating to Susianer. He gave the green light to borrowing money and updating pages, because he knew that only she could help him realize his dream of spreading comics to China. Luoyang lamented that Zhao Jing was still moving forward for his dream, so what was his dream? Luoyang, who had just woken up, was obviously a little dazed and his mind was a little floating. Miao Bai's Book of Life and Death is popular. Zhao Jing suppressed his excitement. Very popular. How popular is popular, Luoyang said subconsciously, and just after he finished speaking, he finally woke up. Very popular. In Tencent Comics, when a comic book's performance improved, Zhao Jing would call it popular, but since Luoyang joined Tencent Comics, he had never heard the other party say popular. Even Susian or Susian series could only be called popular, not popular. Nationwide. Nationwide, Luoyang took a breath. I remember that Book of Life and Death has only 2 chapters. Although the second chapter of Miaobi is indeed amazing, can it really reach the whole country before we promote it? How small is the comic circle? As the editor-in-chief, Luoyang knows it well. Although the statistics show that the number of people who read comics regularly is 50 million, there are definitely less than 10 million people. Therefore, no matter how amazing Book of Life and Death is, they must wait for Tencent Comics to promote it. Moreover, they will not promote Book of Life and Death at all now, because it is only 2 chapters now. Although the plot of the first 2 chapters made Luoyang think of it as a masterpiece, he was not sure about the plot of the later part and whether it would collapse. He has seen too many suspense and reasoning comics that were not rounded off in the later stage and were eunuchs. Therefore, it is impossible to promote it. Get up and check the hot searches on Weibo, and you will know what is going on. Hearing this, Luoyang got up directly, did not wash up, turned on the computer directly, and then logged into Weibo. Like Zhao Jing, he read it very carefully and for a long time. After reading most of it, Luoyang calmed down the excitement that suddenly surged in his heart, and asked as if in a dream, "How are the website data?" In just a few hours, the traffic of Tencent Comics Network is 10 times the traffic of the previous website in a whole day, and the number of new registrations has reached 800,000. When Zhao Jing said this data, he himself was a little unbelievable, knowing that it was only a few hours. This data is normal. Now the Book of Life and Death is at the forefront of the storm. Although Luoyang couldn't believe it, he still knew the authenticity of this data. The school violence incident was a social event that involved the whole country and received high attention. As a result, the big VS on Weibo are now expressing their opinions one by one. All of them are expressing their opinions on the justice of the Book of Life and Death like Yagamai and L, and arguing on Weibo. Once this incident ferments, it will naturally arouse everyone's curiosity. Although the Book of Life and Death has only 2 episodes, its plot, logic, and creativity are excellent, and the quality is top-notch. It is hard not to be popular. Now I just hope that Miaobi doesn't collapse halfway. Zhao Jing is most worried that Susiener will not be able to control Book of Life and Death and cause the comic to collapse halfway, which will disappoint people who have just read the comic. In addition, the other painting styles are basically all muscle style, which means that as long as Susiener's plot collapses, these new fans may be disappointed with the comic and run away. Call Miaobi to ask her in the evening. Luoyang was on the phone while browsing the book review area and found that the entire book review area had been occupied by new readers. I've read the comics before, but I couldn't stand the style and gave up. Today, I learned about this comic from Weibo and was amazed. Has the style of comics changed completely recently? And the plot is really great. I'm addicted now. I'm addicted. I read the Book of Life and Death every hour. I memorized the lines in it. L's IQ is really super high. Oh my god, it's my first time reading a comic. The Book of Life and Death is really great. It's 10,000 times more exciting than the mystery novels I read before. I advise the above to only read the Book of Life and Death is fine, forget about other comics, they are too eye-catching. I still can't agree with Light Yagamai's justice, but L is very much to my taste. I hope L won't be played to death by Light Yagamai. Update, 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 update. Mr. Miaobi's Susien series can be delayed for a while, and update the Book of Life and Death first. In just a few hours, anyone who discusses justice on Weibo will bring up the comic The Book of Life and Death, which makes everyone curious. As a result, when they come to take a look now, they are directly attracted by the comic The Book of Life and Death. I'll call later. Zhao Jing looked at the time and said, for high school, school should be over at this time. Obviously Zhao Jing couldn't wait until the evening, and Luoyang agreed with him, because now is the time when Weibo is still hot, and he also hopes to get a reassuring answer from Susianer. Thinking about it, Luoyang refreshed it, and saw that there were tens of thousands of comments directly added, and couldn't help but be amazed. If the Book of Life and Death is well managed this time, the readers of the comics industry may increase several times. While the two were waiting, ding ling 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 ling. Susianer, who had been waiting for a long time, finally heard the school bell ring. Just as she was about to get up and leave, Zhou Qinjie glared at her, asked her to sit down, then picked up the test paper and nodded as she saw the answers filled in. As a result, when she turned to the composition, she wanted to see the other party's summary of justice in her heart, and her face suddenly turned black. Meng is justice. 4 words, and then there was a blank, which made Zhou Qinjie almost faint. Teacher, there's more to come. Seeing this, Susianer hurriedly said that this was just her prank, who made Zhou Qinjie always suppress her. What's the matter? I asked you to write 800 words, and you only wrote a few words for me. As she said that, Zhou Qinjie was stunned when she saw the sentence in the middle. Justice may be late, but it will never be absent. However, late justice is not real justice. The short sentence composition made her stand there. When I was halfway through writing, my mind drifted to the plot of Susianer going to college. Then when I continued writing, I found that my mind was full of college plots. It took a long time before I got inspiration, so I was half an hour late. It's my fault. Finally, please recommend me OVO. I will die without recommendation votes. Thank you Daoji Chengzi for throwing me 10,000 Kidian coins, and thank you Ling Xi and Shi Mang for becoming the elder of this book, transformed into a comic book artist author, Miao by Sheng Wu. Chapter 79. Justice may be late, but it will never be absent. However, delayed justice is by no means real justice. In a previous life, this quote came from Justice Hunit. The original sentence is justice is never absent, only late. The meaning is criticism of delayed justice and dissatisfaction with inefficient court trials, indicating that delayed justice is not real for everyone. Of justice. Before Susianer traveled through time, this sentence had already been taken out of context, completely overturning the original thought. Instead, he praised delayed justice and became a kind of chicken soup for the soul. Therefore, in order to prevent people in this world from misinterpreting the original meaning again, Susianer expanded the sentence and turned it into what Zhou Qinjie saw now. But this sentence did not appear in this world. This was the result of a secret search on her mobile phone, so she was lazy and copied it out directly. Zhou Qinjie looked at this sentence and was a little shocked. The meaning of this sentence is very simple, so simple that even elementary school students who have read books can understand its meaning. But it was because of its simplicity that Zhou Qinjie was surprised, because this sentence showed a critical spirit and pointed out various social phenomena. For example, in the school violence incidents in recent days, when the students were bullied, someone came out to save them, but it was already too late. What has happened has happened. Even if the bullied students are saved, it has left a psychological shadow on the original students. There are many more phenomena like this. This sentence summarizes almost all social injustices. Is this the justice in Susianer's heart? Zhou Qinjie couldn't help but glance at the other person, but found that the other person was yawning with her mouth open, and tears were overflowing. Seeing this, she snorted coldly, "You got 0 marks for your essay." Huh? Why? When Susianer heard this, she blinked at Zhou Qinjie. She felt that although there was only one sentence, Hyunet's words were indeed classic. I ask you to write 800 words. If you give me one sentence, how many points do you think I should give you? If this is the college entrance examination, no matter what your sentence is, according to the rules, it will be 0 points, Jo Kinja said willfully. Then he waved his hand and said, okay, you can collect your papers and then go home. Take a good nap at noon and don't sleep in class in the afternoon. Apparently, when Susiener was in class recently, she was playing with her mobile phone without being noticed by the teacher, but when she fell asleep in class, it was reported to Jo Kinja. God, there is no 0 score for 800 words. Although Susiener wanted to complain, she had no choice but to think about it. She did not dare to resist Jo Kinja's hegemony, so she could only go to Lin Jingshu to collect the test papers together. How was your Chinese test? The teacher said, full marks. Before Lin Jingshu could be surprised, she heard Susiener's cell phone ringing. Hello, Susiener looked at the caller and didn't feel anything. Although she had told the caller not to make phone calls while at school, maybe the caller had already become aware of the crisis, so he called her. Teacher Miobi, your book of life and death has become a phenomenon. I am calling you to ask if you are sure about the follow-up plot and whether it will collapse, Zhao Jing called. Without too many pleasantries, but ask straight to the point. Susiener's answer is very important. If the other party is just thinking about the plot while drawing, then they can only suppress the idea of promotion and wait until the other party is finished. And if Susiener's answer is that the outline is complete and she is very sure about the subsequent plot, they can promote it. In line with the discussion on Weibo at this time, as long as there is a little promotion, Book of Life and Death will definitely reach incredible levels. It's only been 2 words, is it that popular? Susiener thought the other party was calling to ask about harmony, but she didn't expect it to be wrong. That's right, Teacher Miobi, you should be in class today. You can log in to Weibo now to check the situation, and you can find out more. Zhao Jing suppressed his excitement and spoke relatively calmly. Upon hearing this, Susiener used Lin Jingshu's mobile phone to log onto Weibo out of curiosity, and immediately saw the #1 hot search topic hashtag on the justice of the comic book of life and death. She blinked and was a little surprised. Lin Jingshu came over to take a look and said in surprise, isn't this a comic you drew? There were basically no secrets when the two of them rented together. Before, Susiener could hide that she was a painter, and when she was painting, she could close the door and no one could come in. After the result was exposed, Susiener was too lazy to hide it, so Lin Jingshu naturally knew about her comics and also knew that she participated in the comics newcomer competition in the comics industry. As a result, I was naturally shocked when I saw Susiener's comic title as the first hot search on Weibo. She didn't read comics before, but since she met Susiener, she wanted to know something about her life, so she naturally tried to read comics. As a result, she couldn't see it at all. She wanted to see what Susiener had drawn, but thinking that it was a notebook, she was too shy to look at it. She only learned about the Book of Life and Death last night, but she hadn't read it yet. Thinking of this, Lin Jingshu felt that it was necessary to go back and see what this Book of Life and Death was like. Hearing this, Susiener raised her finger and said shhh, and then said to Zhao Jing on the phone, did you really not find the fatal point of this comic? What? Zhao Jing said confusedly, the fatal point. What a fatal point? Think about it, if someone made a birth and death book in reality, and then wrote their names. Susiener stopped talking and said nothing more. Zhao Jing didn't react for a moment, but after thinking about it for a while, his face changed drastically. After thinking deeply for a while, cold sweats came down. According to Miobi, if someone really did this, and it was exposed by the media, combined with the school violence in the past few days. The more Zhao Jing thought about it, the more panicked he became. Is his dream, which he finally realized, going to die. If the Book of Life and Death was banned, no one would criticize this comic, but would feel sorry for it, because the comic itself is not wrong, but those who made the Book of Life and Death are wrong, but the country doesn't care about these. As long as there is such a trend, then the Book of Life and Death is doomed to die. Miobi, why didn't you say it earlier? Zhao Jing is an editor-in-chief after all. He gradually calmed down at this time, but he couldn't help complaining. How did I know it would be so popular? Susiener muttered. She had only sent 2 sentences, but before she could react, the Book of Life and Death became popular all over the country. If it weren't for the essay in the morning as a prelude, she would probably be shocked. I wanted to mention it briefly in the evening so that they could prepare early, but it became so popular this morning, which is much more brutal than the influence of her original song Sakura Sakura Wants to See You. However, the school violence incident is a social event, which is closely related to the people, so it naturally received a lot of attention. Coupled with the online experts and professors arguing, the whole incident has intensified, directly putting the Book of Life and Death on the cusp of the storm. Then what can you do, Mr. Miobi? There is a way, Susiener said bluntly, that is to stop people from making the Book of Life and Death. Zhao Jing couldn't help rolling his eyes. If it could be banned, why would Susiener say it? I understand. Zhao Jing took a deep breath and then said, then I won't bother Teacher Miobi. After the 2 of them said hello, Zhao Jing hung up the phone and called Luoyang directly, notify all other editors-in-chief and even responsible editors to gather at the company at 2 o'clock this afternoon. What's wrong? Meeting, urgent matter. If it's not handled well, Book of Life and Death will be finished. The update may be late, but it will never be interrupted. Well, it's late again. I'm just asking for a recommendation vote. Ovo. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Transformed into a comic book artist. Author, Miao by Shen Wu. Chapter 80. Tencent Comics Headquarters, Conference Room. Today is the time for employees to take a holiday. Except for those who are on duty, the editorial department is not as lively as before. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. Because in the editing industry, you can work from home even during holidays. But today, the people on duty saw many editors rushing to the company, and then rushed to the conference room, with curiosity in their eyes. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the conference room was full of people. This time, Zhao Jing summoned all the editors-in-chief and responsible editors, standing in the first row and looking at everyone. As a result, before he spoke, the editor-in-chief Lin Weiguo anxiously said, "What happened? What's wrong with the Book of Life and Death?" While he was still eating, Luoyang called him and informed him that there was a problem with the Book of Life and Death. As a result, before he asked, he said that he had to contact other editors and hung up. All the editors present were confused and bewildered, but they felt nervous inside. How popular is Book of Life and Death now? To sum it up in one sentence, it is a nationwide discussion. In just a few hours, Weibo, Taiba, and forums were discussing this comic. The justice derived from Light Yagami NL in the comic was debated on Weibo, and people were expressing their opinions all the time. Like Zhao Jing, they also received the news. The website traffic increased sharply, and the number of registered people reached 1 million early in the morning. Of course, there was one thing that made them unhappy, that is, the traffic of Yu-Yaokai was also increasing dramatically. After all, Book of Life and Death was an entry in the new comic competition, and Book of Life and Death was also available on Yu-Yaokai. This matter is very important. We called everyone here to brainstorm. Zhao Jing frowned, and then briefly told everyone what Susiener said, and then said, "The matter is very serious. You also know what the topic is being discussed online now. What topic? Of course, it is the school violence topic. Although Book of Life and Death now occupies the public's attention, the school violence incident is the center of the storm. So what would happen if a student who had read the Book of Life and Death made a Book of Life and Death with a bad or angry mood? Yes, the real production can only be regarded as peripherals. The Book of Life and Death naturally does not have the effect in the comics, but this influence is extremely bad. It is like the ancient straw doll. Although it is just a psychological effect, what will your classmates, teachers, colleagues, and even relatives think when they know that you have written his name into the Book of Life and Death? This is the main reason why the small book was banned in the previous life. The peripherals of the small book infinitely magnified the ugliness of human nature and induced people to commit crimes. When the media exposed it, it caused an uproar, and even CCTV reported it. The editor present, with a turn of his head, knew the seriousness of the matter. In this case, we can directly issue an announcement to prohibit all manufacturers and individuals from making peripherals of the Book of Life and Death. An editor thought for a while and said, "No. The manufacturer doesn't have the copyright granted by MAOB teacher, so naturally they won't make peripherals. And it's fine if we don't say it. Once we say it, it will make this matter public." No one expected it. Aren't we confessing it? Lin Weiguo shook his head directly when he heard it, and then frowned and said, "The most important thing is actually personal production. We all know that the Book of Life and Death is actually no different from a notebook in comics. Although it is black, it will be available in major bookstores. When the time comes, those children will buy it back and directly make a Book of Life and Death by themselves. You can't control it at all. Copyright protection in this world is very strict. Without the author or official authorization, infringement is naturally prohibited. But those underage children have not yet formed copyright awareness. In addition, some children are bullied by bad teenagers at school and cannot fight back, so they can only take this kind of psychological comfort shortcut. They think that they just need to vent their anger secretly. School violence, workplace conflicts, family conflicts, and other things can make children and adults do this. Editor-in-Chief Ye Wei also said that young people are the foundation of the country. If such a thing happens, the country will definitely not let it get worse. At that time, as long as one incident is exposed, the Book of Life and Death will be directly banned. But we must keep the Book of Life and Death. The current data of the Book of Life and Death is too amazing, and the praise rate is almost 100%. There are all urging for updates under its book review area, and the number of readers is increasing with the passage of time. This also means that as long as the Book of Life and Death is animated, its influence will be very large. You know, there are many people who don't like to read comics, just because they find it troublesome, and if it is animated, they believe that the Book of Life and Death can attract more readers than comics. This is the fundamental difference between animation and comics. There are not many people in the ACT circle. It's not easy to see a Book of Life and Death, but it was banned for this reason. This is something that editors like them don't allow. Afterwards, the entire conference room had a heated discussion for an hour, and all the editors and editors-in-chief expressed their opinions. However, an hour later, Zhao Jing rubbed his forehead, and in this air-conditioned conference room, sweat even flowed down his forehead. In fact, we just discussed how to avoid the country, but there was no result. So, why don't we do the opposite? Lu Yang frowned, thought for a while and thought of something, and slowly said, "We all know that the country is developing the ACK industry, and even established the China Animation Culture Administration to coordinate and develop this industry. Then the incident this morning, maybe the people in the administration have already known about it, and they must have discovered this comic, so why don't we come to talk about it?" The China Animation Culture Administration is a department specially established by the state, with the main purpose of developing, coordinating, and managing the entire ACK industry. But the ACK industry is not developed just because the country wants to develop it. It also depends on whether the people like it. Most of those who like ACK are young people, but because of the comics industry, the style of painting has caused most young people to resist the second dimension, so ACK has been slow to develop. The power of a department is linked to whether the development of an industry is prosperous. If ACK develops and prospers, then the power of the administration is great, and if the industry is sluggish, then the power of the administration is relatively small. So in Luoyang's opinion, those people in the administration should be even more reluctant to see Book of Life and Death banned. This comic carries the hopes of many people. Only 2 chapters make people who have read it look forward to the following plot. Everyone who has read it is urging for more. This is a huge success. No comic has ever received such an honor in the past. And Book of Life and Death did it, which means that perhaps the opportunity for the development of ACK should be in this comic. Well said. Zhao Jing's eyes suddenly lit up when he heard it. Tencent Animation originally responded to the country's call to develop the ACK industry. It doesn't make sense that we need to worry about this matter, as he said. Zhao Jing narrowed his eyes, then looked at the time and it was already 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and continued, "It just so happens that there is a branch in Modu, I'll go there, you continue to think of a solution." As he said, Zhao Jing didn't wait for everyone to speak, and pushed the door out, swift and resolute. Finally finished writing the foreplay OVO. Please recommend votes, I want to think about the Gaoqiao behind. Transformed into a comic book artist. Author, Miao by Sheng Wu. Chapter 81. As soon as Zhao Jing came out of the conference room, he thought of something and stopped in his tracks. I picked up my phone, sent a message, and waited quietly for a minute before I received a call. "Old Zhao, I gave you my private number so that you can call me at any time. You send a message every time and ask me to call you. Do you want to save on phone bills?" As soon as he answered the phone, a helpless voice came from the other end of the phone. Sound. "Mr. Fan, if something happens to you, wouldn't it be disturbing if I called you?" Zhao Jing knew the other party was joking, so he said with a smile. "It's really stupid." Mr. Fan shook his head and laughed. "Tell me, what's the matter?" "I'm very busy." The two have known each other since early on, so they still talk very casually. "The thing is like this." Zhao Jing briefly described the matter, and then said firmly, "We must do our best to protect this Book of Life and Death." After listening to this, Mr. Fan was a little shocked. Is this comic really that great? Since it was only a few hours in the morning and he was quite busy, he had not yet learned about the situation in time. Now when he heard what Zhao Jing said, he was shocked. In just a few hours, the traffic of Tencent Animation Network increased more than 10 times. Is this still the case when there is evil spirit dividing their flow? Although he couldn't believe it in his heart, Mr. Fan knew that Zhao Jing would not lie to him. He collected his thoughts and said, "What do you need me to do?" "The development of Tencent Animation will be of great benefit to him, which will give him a greater say in the head office. It is simply a fantasy that just one Book of Life and Death can bring an industry together," but Zhao Jing just explained the reason, which made him reluctantly accept this concept. "I heard that, Mr. Fan, you are in the capital Yanjing these days," Zhao Jing said bluntly. "We just discussed it at the meeting. This matter must be known to the people in the administration, but I'm afraid that the power of the Shanghai branch is not strong enough. You can do Tai Chi with me, so I would like to invite you to visit the headquarters of the administration, preferably now." "You are quite well informed." Mr. Fan looked at the time. It was around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He thought for a while and said, "Okay, I'll go over now." The administration itself hopes that the ACK industry will develop, and they should rack their brains to help us. If you want to find a solution, you don't have to go to the Shanghai branch, just wait for my news. Nowadays, the authority of the China Animation and Animation Culture Administration Bureau is not very large, so the staff in the administration bureau actually work very leisurely, no different from Qingshui Yamen. They can't find anything to do at all. It is easy to meet the director. Okay, Zhao Jing nodded. After hanging up the phone, Mr. Fan did not leave immediately. Instead, he turned on the computer and looked at Weibo. Then he browsed through the 2 chapters of Book of Life and Death and thought for a while before leaving. Then Zhao Jing returned to the conference room. He originally wanted everyone to go back and wait for the news. Unfortunately, everyone was obviously very anxious now and had no idea of going back. As time passed, the editors in the conference room relaxed and chatted away. Until a harsh bell rang, their hearts skipped a beat and their expressions instantly became tense. Zhao Jing was also nervous. He knew that this call was an ultimatum, whether to ban or continue serialization. It was at this moment. Mr. Fan, he said, looking at the expectant looks on both sides of the conference table, he continued, "Can I put it on speakerphone? The editors in the newsroom have been waiting for more than an hour. They probably also want to get the news as soon as possible." Okay, after saying that, Mr. Fan said straight to the point, "Book of Life and Death can continue to be serialized." As soon as he finished speaking, he heard cheers on the other end of the phone and said in a helpless tone, "But don't be too happy too early, this is conditional. If it cannot be completed, Book of Life and Death will still have to be blocked." "What conditions?" Zhao Jing's face tightened, and the editor's heart skipped a beat. "Before that, you must tell me, will the plot of this Book of Life and Death collapse?" Mr. Fan was very serious at this time. "If the subsequent Book of Life and Death collapses, then they will do their best to preserve this comic. It would definitely become a joke by then, and he didn't want to lose face. Moreover, it is a small loss of face. I am afraid that Tencent Animation will also be ridiculed by others in the industry." Miyobi has already said that the entire comic is in her mind, from the beginning to the end. Zhao Jing also answered rigorously, "I don't think she will make a joke about it." Hearing this, Mr. Fan's expression softened. He nodded and said, "In that case, let me talk about the conditions of the administration." When he came to the door, the entire administration already knew about the Book of Life and Death on the internet. Everyone was obviously very happy that there could be such a phenomenon-level comic in the Chinese comic industry with just the beginning. But when he brought the news, the director was stunned for a moment, and then called a meeting with senior management personnel. Unlike Zhao Jing and others, the administration clearly understood the problems within the system better, so it came to a conclusion in just half an hour. First, they must ensure that the plot of Book of Life and Death does not collapse, otherwise their efforts to ensure it will make no sense. Second, the Book of Life and Death must be rated and no one under the age of 17 is allowed to watch it. Third, Book of Life and Death does not allow any peripheral products. Tencent Animation must strictly prohibit all peripheral products related to Book of Life and Death and cooperate with the official crackdown on individual private production. In serious cases, court leaflets will be issued directly. Fourth, during the period of public opinion about school violence, the qualifications for the Book of Life and Death newcomer comic contest will be cancelled, and any form of publicity will not be allowed for a short period of time. Fifth, find a way to eliminate the influence of Book of Life and Death and divert public attention. Sixth, Light Yagami must die. This is the requirement of the administration. The first 4 points are very simple. Mr. Fan said so and didn't say much. After listening to it, Zhao Jing was a little confused, or all the editors were very annoyed after listening to it. Indeed, the first 4 points are very simple. First, there is the guarantee of Mr. Miyobi. Second, they just need to set up their website. Third, the same is true. Fourth, disqualification is also beneficial to them. After all, Yaokai is still taking advantage of them now. As long as the qualification of Book of Life and Death is disqualified, readers who want to read Book of Life and Death can only go to Tencent Comics. But, what are the fifth and sixth points? Now all major platforms on the internet are discussing Book of Life and Death. This is no longer something that any group can suppress. The whole people are discussing school violence and Book of Life and Death. How can they suppress it? And the sixth point is simply contrary to the first point. Let the comics not collapse, and then let the protagonist die. Isn't this affecting the author himself? Is there no other solution? Zhao Jing couldn't help asking. Now the whole incident is at the forefront, and the Book of Life and Death still has this hidden danger, and it is also involved in the school violence incident. President Fan was helpless. What other solutions do you think there are? But, even if the sixth article can be done, what about the fifth article? Zhao Jing saw that all the editors showed desperate expressions on their faces, and he knew that no one could think of a solution. Hiring Quality Water Army to divert the topic. President Fan couldn't say anything more. Indeed, the fifth article is simply too much to ask. The Water Army has no effect in front of the People's Wave, and it is estimated that the water will not splash. Now Weibo and other platforms are hotly discussing. This topic that the whole country is involved in cannot be suppressed casually. Moreover, the initiator of this incident is Ye Wei, the editor-in-chief of the Youth Daily, and behind him is the Huaxia Youth Daily. Thinking of this, President Fan dared not speak rashly. Seeing that Mr. Fan didn't say anything, Zhao Jing could only helplessly say, then let's hire some Quality Water Army tomorrow and try to see if it works. That's the only way. The matter of Book of Life and Death seemed to have reached a dead end. No one could think of how to solve it, but the people in the management bureau were afraid of being implicated, and they didn't dare to really protect it. This was desperate. As time went by, the editors of Tencent Animation obviously knew that it was very likely that the final result of Book of Life and Death would be banned. Just when the editors were worried, at 8 o'clock in the evening, Zhou Qinjia was revising the students' test papers, and saw that the next one was Susieners. After revising all the questions except the composition, she turned to the composition again. She wanted to give a 0 score directly, but looking at the touching sentence, she hesitated for a while, took a photo with her mobile phone, and then sent it to a group of teachers in the Magic City and asked, "How many points should I give for this composition? Please recommend OVO."